ground floor.
They'll grow, and then there's also some little animals in there, like little insects and woodlice and stuff. So when it starts to get colder, the plants have sort of grown to capacity. Like there's enough water left for them to stay alive, but there's not enough water left for them to grow more. So then in the winter, you'll start to notice as the sunlight goes down, they start to die. Like you can see some of them are a little bit shriveled. So once they start to die, then the insects come in, they eat the dying plant matter, they excrete it into the soil, and then the next time summer rolls around, those nutrients are reused to grow again. So, I mean, I bought those closed terrariums there probably, I think, about 3 years ago now. And they've just got this cycle, and you can't see it now. One of the plants in there is actually an orchid. And it flowers every summer, and it's just perfect. So I have 2 of them. I have 3 of them, actually. And I'm probably going to buy another one tomorrow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so
let's go.
Ladies and gents.
Are we recording?
Yes, we're recording. We've been recording. Welcome.
No way.
So ladies and gents, welcome to the Ground Floor Podcast. I'm here today with Hykie. Hykie, how are you doing?
I'm well, man, Jason. It's super cool.
Fantastic.
We're busy, and I'm just excited to finally
be here.
Yeah.
Yes. It's been a while, hey? It's been hectic. So we were just talking about the closed terrarium that I've got there for anyone who's just sort of joined us. So Hykie, tell me, Reinhard told me, or was it you or was it Reinhard? It was you who told me that someone on the Binnelanders set got bitten in the face by a dog.
So what happens is, and especially now with COVID as well. So if especially in the soap genre. So Binnelanders is a soap, you need to understand it. It's not a series or it's not a movie, it's a soap, and they've got a very specific way in working and scheduling the scenes and stuff. So when something like that happens and somebody has to be taken out of the schedule for like a week or 2 weeks and stuff, it creates massive
chaos.
Yeah. So, and the thing was, so she was bitten in the face. It's a she. I'm not going to say who it was, but and now apparently it's infected. It's
infected.
You can't see this one. I'm going to show this on that camera. So this finger. Check that funky little nail there. About 6 months ago, my wife and I, and she's a gym fanatic, and she's super beautiful and everything, just to say that, okay? But I dropped a dumbbell on this finger in the gym. I wanted to put the dumbbell back, and there's this gym rack, and there's this piece of metal. So as I was doing shoulder presses, and on failure, I wanted to put it back, and my finger slipped underneath, and it literally split this finger in two, the bone. The nail was off. And it like burst here at the bottom. So what they had to do was, I couldn't go and film the next day because I had to go to a hospital and they had to stitch it up, and I got a pin that they had to put in here. So they had to work in a scene where I had to hit somebody, and thank God there was a setup where I was going to hit this person. Otherwise they had to write it in. And in Binnelanders, the character broke his finger. So they had to.
So you had the bandage on.
I had the bandage on for about 3 months. It started looking ridiculous. People were going, "When is this freaking bandage gonna come off?" But it was because of this.
Yeah, and now it's saved, full functionality.
Well, it's saved. Yeah, except I can't really. It is. It's still flipping sensitive, It's sensitive. I play a little bit of guitar. The other day I took the guitar and went, "Oh my word! Imagine I was a professional singer and imagine I had to play guitar. I wouldn't have been able to do it."
Yeah, career over, just like that.
Yeah. The injuries.
Yeah,
of the performing arts.
No, it's hectic. So, I mean, for those of you who don't know, Hykie has been playing on a series called Binnelanders, which is the same series that Reinhard, who I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, he plays on. And then also Arnu. That episode isn't even out yet. It's probably going to come out on Saturday. He also was on Binnelanders for a little while, which is how all these guys know each other.
Yeah.
And which is also how I managed to get in contact with everyone, because I only got in contact with
Reinhard. Yeah.
And from there...
he was really applauding the way you did his podcasts, by the way. So he came to me and he said, "Listen, Hykie, can I give your number to this guy called JC and everything and stuff?" And he's really super cool and stuff. And I really trusted him because he was really adamant on me, coming here. So yeah. Thank you, Reinhard, if you're watching. I hope you're listening to my podcast.
I hope so. Did you listen to his episode?
No, not yet. I will. I have to. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Reinhard texted me last night as well because I had recorded with Arnu, and then Reinhard and Arnu spoke, and Reinhard also told me that Arnu had a great time apparently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt very good to know that I can sort of keep someone entertained for 2 hours. But yeah, so Hykie's on the show, he's on Binnelanders, and then also it's actually interesting because I've been Binnelanders is not something that, at least for some years now, I've sat down and actively watched. What usually happens is I've got my laptop set up in such a way so that I can face the TV. And it's in a public area where my family moves through every day. So I usually put the TV on BBC throughout the day, and I'm just checking every now and again on the news and keeping posted with what's going on in the world. So at about 5 p.m., that TV switches over to Kyknet, and then my parents will go and sit, and my brother will sit, and they'll watch TV, and I'll still be working at my laptop. So I do sort of, I'm usually up to date with the gist of what's going on in the story. So Reinhard to me has been this guy who, I know what's going on with his character. He's been on the screen for the longest time, but I can never really say that I've sat down and watched and really taken everything in. But you're very different. And the reason you're different is because I am a Survivor fanatic.
Oh, well, yeah.
Survivor is... when Survivor comes around every year, the world stops for me. I never miss.
Have you tried to apply to be a contestant?
So I was going to apply 2 years ago. I decided it was at the end of my first year. So I decided I was going to apply. But the problem is, we have the business I was telling you about earlier, Summarize, we have this recruitment phase at the beginning of every year where we have to get new first years on board. So I thought to myself, like, I don't really care if I miss the first 2 weeks of university, but if we don't do that recruitment, then, the business is screwed for the rest of the year. And at that stage, I didn't have anyone who I could really rely on to do it on my
Can I tell you what I'm super excited about?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping for this. So they are busy shooting, I think, the 9th or the 10th Survivor at the moment, which means they can do an all-star. They can take all the previous winners.
You reckon?
So I was on the 4th Survivor, the one on Maldives. Now, on the back of my book, I wrote in 2016, my first book was published, and it did so well so that they said, well, listen, let's translate it back. Well, let's translate it to English. So I write in English. I don't write in Afrikaans. Both my books I wrote in English. Then I get a friend, and she kind of translates most of it, and then I've got to rewrite it in Afrikaans. I know it's so stupid. I do double the amount of work, and then it goes to the publisher. So the first one did so well, they said, listen, but let's print it in English. And the English one was called Hykie Berg, Ultimate Survivor, Safe From, and that was a book where I shared about my addiction and how I recovered, and how Survivor and that whole process was a very profound time of my life. So. And that book just won the Andrew Murray Desmond Tutu Prize now.
Holy shit.
Yeah, the English one. Just now, you couldn't believe it. Anyway, so...
Came out 5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 5 years ago. And it's called Ultimate Survivor because, I mean, the story kind of... That's what the publishers decided that's what they wanted to call it. Obviously, because I wasn't Survivor, and just by grace I won the thing and stuff. And winning R1 million is amazing. It's awesome.
I saw you... I noticed the gap on Binnelanders.
I
noticed that your character left for some time.
Well, let me tell you something. So we shot that in 2010 December, and when I won, so I was on Binnelanders from 2008 to 2010, and that was going to be my plan originally as well, because I don't want to stay in a soapy for longer than 2 years. It's always been a thing of mine. I resigned, and then I freelanced for 6 years, and then in 2016 I saw the producers again of Binnelanders, and they asked me, do I want to come back as the same character? And I said, great. And then in 2018, I resigned again to write this and finish the second book. And then what happened was, and I said, listen, now I'm done. I don't want to go back to Binnelanders. I've got other interests, and I want to do other acting gigs and everything. And then what happened was the guy that plays my father, At. So he's 75 at the moment, and he wants to kind of retire. He comes in every once in a while, but he's not as present as what he used to be. So, and I'm his only son. I'm the only one that's a doctor and a son, and the legacy of Binnelanders can carry on through me. So we chatted again, and I made a very good offer. So I decided to come back a bit more full time. But what I wanted to say about Survivor All Stars is, so in the States, they've done the 40th Survivor in the States.
Yeah, it's very popular there. They've done
the winnings were $2 million this time. I mean, Boston Rob went on for the third or the fourth time. He played against his wife. His wife was playing against him, and it'll just be so cool that if in South Africa they can do an All Stars.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty awesome.
I'll go immediately.
What did you think of the guy who won the last one? What was his name again?
It was a coloured guy. The coloured guy.
Wasn't it? Yeah, what was his name? I can't remember.
Dude,
it's amazing. Like, if you had asked me then, I would have told you the name of every single cast member.
Well, what I did was, so what I think. Look, Survivor is great, and if you win the money, that's even better. But you've got a lot of these winners, they win and then you never hear from them again. And I think you have to just use that year or 2 years and ride the wave, and so that people can there's great opportunity after winning Survivor if you win something like that. What was his name?
No, I can't remember. But anyway, so Hykie obviously won Survivor, and you won the $1 million. There's a question I've always wanted to ask. When you win the $1 million from Survivor, do they take tax from that million? You get the $1 million straight.
No, because it's winnings.
It's winnings, right?
Winnings, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know what the law is at the moment.
I've had debates with people over this.
No. I don't know what the law is at the moment. I know in the States you pay tax on the lottery money. I think. In South Africa, not yet. I'm not exactly sure, but no, it's all winnings. I got out $1 million.
Yes, that must have been a.
And let me tell you what was so funny, because I came out of a very, very difficult time of my life, and literally the payslip, I still have the payslip today. It says 1,01,234 rand. There was 1,234 rand, and then I received $1 million.
Okay.
Which was amazing, and it feels great. I honored a promise that I made to Bonnie on the island. I told her during the show that if I win, I'll give her 10%, which I did. So I went and the studio is not really supposed to know about this, because you're not allowed to barter on the island at all. Like, for example, one of the questions they'll ask you when you go for the interview is they'll say, if the three of you, if you, me, and let's say Reinhard are on the island, and you win a challenge, and you kind of have to decide what's going to happen now. What would you do? And what most people say is, they think about, like, well, you and I will go into alliance and we'll say, listen, let's vote Reinhard out. Okay, we'll work together, and then one of us will win the $1 million. Okay, and then we split it. Yeah. And if you do that in the interview, they're not even going to cast you, because that's what everybody does. But you're not allowed to do that. It's against you. You actually sign a big fat contract. It says you won't do that.
So what are the rules? Because they don't explain the rules to the viewers. Obviously all that happens for the viewers is Nico Benaggio comes on wearing like the latest K-Way stuff, looking as cool as possible, and he says, "Welcome to Survivor." They introduce the castmates, and from the audience perspective, by all means, you people are just dropped and there you go. But there's a lot that goes into it.
So much. So just to give you perspective, so you guys, so one episode equals 3 days of shooting. So you've got these film crews that run after you and they film you. They don't speak to you, they don't chat with you, they'll just laugh at you, whatever. Nobody gives you anything. There's no food, there are no toilets, there are no toiletries, there are none of that stuff. You've got water, constant fresh water.
Yeah, from the well where they always put the immunity out by the well. Yes.
So you have that, but nothing there are no beds. There's no KFC that that somebody gives you. It just doesn't exist. So, but 3 days on that island, so you've got 2 or 3 film crews, so that's about 440. How much? You've got to kind of work it out. It's about 400 hours of footage. Get all these camera crews and then you've got to edit that into 48 minutes for you guys to watch. So obviously, so you guys see maybe 5 or 7% of everything that's filmed. So so obviously a lot happens. A lot of mundane stuff also happens behind the camera. I mean, the crew has to film the whole time. And I mean, on the third and the fourth and the sixth day, people are so sick and they're so, it's hectic to be on an island. So often, I mean, there's nothing really interesting that they're shooting. So the editors have got to cut it out. But what happens is, so the cameras stop rolling for in the afternoon for 15 minutes, and then the medics kind of come in, because they're not going to let you die. I mean, or if you've cut yourself badly and stuff, the medics will come in, they'll have a look at whatever is wrong with you, and then they're also coming to give you if you're on chronic medication, like for example, when women are on, for example, a contraceptive, they have to come in and get the medication, or chronic medication or whatever. So 15 minutes in the afternoon, they'll come in, you'll receive your medication and everything, and that's it. But otherwise, nothing. There was a time, I think in the second week, where the ladies in our teams, they freaked out so badly that we received a half an apple to share between 8 people.
Holy shit.
That was it.
Well, just to get your blood sugar up for a few moments.
But also the other thing that people must remember is that most people that get voted out, and you don't see this on TV, are people that vote themselves out during the show. And they don't show that on TV because it makes for bad television.
Yeah,
for example, it's somebody that's just going to say, listen,
I can't do this anymore.
I've had enough. Just vote me out. I can't do this. Especially, well, males and females, but you must remember, when you're a mother and you've got 3 children and you miss your kids and you miss your husband, there's a lot of emotions that go on. And so they say, listen, take me out of the show, and anybody will rather vote for somebody like that doesn't want to be there than anybody else.
Yeah.
So that's often how people get voted out.
Okay, I see. I mean, to go on Survivor is something that, I mean, I'm sure I'll apply, but I don't know if I'll ever make through. But I think it could be a lot of fun. Did you enjoy it at least? I'm sure you enjoyed the end.
No, I did. It is so much fun. But let me tell you, it is probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life, because you dropped off in an island, and the hardest thing to do is to suddenly, here you've got all these distractions, you've got phone, you've got your coffee, you can do whatever you want. I mean, there's just so much. We're in such comfort zones here, and over there you dropped off, and there's literally nothing that you can do. So eventually, you kind of surrender just to the moment, and you have no responsibilities. You're on this island. You have to kind of become one with the island and just not care anymore, and then. You can truly have a super powerful and profound spiritual experience. I mean, I met Jesus Christ on that island. That's where I became a reborn Christian, on that island, and that's kind of where my life started literally take a whole new different direction. And that's why Survivor was really so special for me, because I've had a lot of struggles with personal problems and addictions and a whole bunch of things and stuff, and been to many treatment facilities, and I've had a lot of sobriety behind me. I've relapsed many times, but it was when I met Christ, things kind of started changing.
It stuck. I was talking to Arnu. We had lunch after the podcast, and we had a podcast after the podcast at the restaurant, just chatting about all sorts of other stuff. And he told me that when he came into Binnelanders, he was sort of in the. He came in right on time to see Reinhard becoming sober for the first time, and all this sort of stuff. And he told me that when when Binnelanders was just really picking up speed, he says that there was a culture of we're gonna care hard, and there's drug use and there's all sorts of stuff. He says with yourself and with Reinhard and with Niels, and it was just a different time.
So thank God I never used and partied with Reinhard and them. So my journey started when I went to treatment for the first time in '99. I was a heroin addict, intravenous heroin addict. It wasn't my drug of choice, but eventually all the drugs just kind of led up to me using heroin and stuff. And I came out, went to treatment, and then only I went and studied drama. Had a good 6 years of career in the industry, and then I had massive relapses.
Into heroin again?
No, cocaine and crack and cat and all the other things, and I couldn't get clean. I went from one treatment facility to the next. I was fired at Sea of Binnelanders, I was fired at so many other gigs, and just nobody wanted to touch me. And then eventually I ended up in a few psychiatric wards, Vescopies and Tara and everything, and I ended up going to Botswana for a year to just kind of get out of the country. Lived in Botswana for a year and a half, came back. I tried a whole bunch of things in Botswana, nothing worked out.
What do you mean when you say things in Botswana?
Well,
like
I've always,
treatment things?
entrepreneurial things. I've always tried to do, various things to earn money apart from the film industry, and I've had many hard knocks, but I've also today been very successful in various business ventures that we have. So I've learned a great deal, but came back with a lot of debt. Moved back in with my mom. I was clean and sober, and in 2007, Elsha, the producer of Binnelanders, she phoned me and she said she heard I'm back in South Africa. She wants me to come and do a screen test, but they just all want to meet me first to see if I'm
stable. Yeah.
If I'm stable, am I on my meds? Am I drinking everything that I'm supposed to drink? Am I clean? And then I started at Binnelanders.
Did you have to do a drug test?
I didn't have to do a drug test, but everybody was there. And the entire, from the producers to all the directors and everything, and they sat there and they all felt, okay, great, this guy's clean and sober, it's awesome. I didn't have a car. I lived in a flat with only a mattress and a few teaspoons. I had to take a black taxi to work to Fox Street when they shot in Fox Street still, in town every day. And slowly but surely, I just knew I had to stay clean, do my work. I had 2 pairs of pants and I had a jacket. That's all I had. And slowly but surely, I stayed sober. I worked there from 2008 2010. My dad in 2010 sent me this old 230 Merc that he had, because he also started saying, okay, this guy's clean again, whatever, let me help him with the car and everything. At the Merc, and then in 2010 I was invited to go to Survivor. And then I won Survivor.
Oh, okay, so that was sort of the end of that chapter.
Well, let me tell you. So what happened on Survivor, apart from the money and apart from the fact that I met, I just won because of grace. That's it. It wasn't because I had a good game plan or anything like that. It's just grace, because it was God's way also to redeem me in the eyes of the public. Because everybody knew I was a junkie. Now for the first time people could see, but this guy actually pulled himself together and he won Survivor. So that was really, really special for me. And then of course, then my kind of perspective on my career started changing quite drastically after Survivor. So yeah.
Okay,
But just to answer your question, sorry. So Reinhard and Niels and all those guys and stuff, they were, while I was at Binnelanders, it was hard and it's tough. I've got to stay clean. I go out with the boys, but I'm clean and sober and everything and stuff. And they used to party hard.
Yeah, they were not clean and sober at the time.
No, they were not clean and sober. So it was really, really, really difficult. But Reinhard and I have always been friends and stuff. And I allowed him to walk his journey. You can't say to somebody, listen, what you're doing, dude, you're going to hurt yourself and everything. And he had to kind of figure that out for himself. And about 5 years ago, he gave his heart to the Lord and he started changing and stuff. And today, look what he's doing. It's incredible.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you are comfortable sort of reflecting back on this, but how does one go from, like a normal guy just growing up to someone who uses heroin? Because heroin is not a gateway drug. Heroin is the end. How does that look like? How did you get to the point where you were a regular drug user back in the late 90s?
Well, look, you're absolutely right. It doesn't start with heroin, but it's always a combination of a whole bunch of things. You can't say I started using drugs because of this or this or that. I know people that took their first line of cocaine or cat and they didn't even know why they took it. They was just there at a party and they just decided to do it. Sorry, excuse me. And obviously what happens is, there are many reasons why people would pick up their first joint or pick up their first line. That's not difficult. People, today cannabis it's kind of legal. I think it's a big mistake because of the value system of the families that are damaged because of this. But that's an argument for a different time. So anyway, so it will start with that, but then people continue using it because it's so freaking nice. Often people ask me, why do my kid use drugs? Well, because of depression, because of this, because of that. It's not. It's because it's so freaking nice. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. Cocaine is the most wonderful. It makes me feel incredible. I love that stuff. I love it. I love crack cocaine. I love heroin. I love all that stuff. It's just the consequences of using it is just too hectic. So, but it's a combination of a whole bunch of things. I come from a family where my mother and father was divorced at a very young age. My father was a workaholic. My mom comes from the Free State, but she came from a family where her father, kind of was a tyrant. So that kind of method of trying to school the kids she inherited that kind of method. It was a real broken setup. My brother also drank quite a lot. When my mother and father got divorced, we went and lived with my mom. My father then got remarried. And just from a very young age, it's that feeling of, I'm not blaming my parents at all. You can't blame your parents, for what you've done. But there were a whole bunch of elements that kind of gave, that will push you to that side. You kind of grow up with feelings of not feeling worthy, not belonging, not feeling a part of, always kind of alienated, always strange, and I always, ever since I was a kid, loved everything that was a bit risque and dark and different and everything. I started stealing from a very young age. I got a kleptomaniac. I started stealing things because it gave me the sense of power as a young child. And I just loved experimenting with this stuff. And it literally went from the one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And it went from cannabis to ecstasy and LSD, which was quite big in the late 90s. LSD is not a big thing really today anymore, but it was a massive drug then. And then from there it went to cocaine, then crack. And what happened was, with the cocaine and the crack come downs, the depression is so heavy that a friend of mine gave me a little bit of heroin to use after the come down,
to pick you back up,
to kind of pick you back up. And the feeling was just incredible. So every time we use cocaine and crack, well, let's use some heroin. And the thing is, all our friends were using it. All our close friends started dealing, and they started becoming big dealers. They started making thousands of rands. I'm not talking about just being a runner here and a runner there and selling a bit of dagga or selling a pill here and stuff. They became massive dealers. I mean, some of our mates were caught and they went to prison for years, 5 years, 10 years, massive. I mean, the head of Narcotics Anonymous, the head of Narcotics at the time, Blackie Swart, were after these guys for years to catch them.
Yeah, friends of yours, yeah.
Yeah, and these guys were our mates. So, and because I also grew up in a very, very conservative, staunch Christian home, and I hated it. I hated everything that Christianity stood for, because I thought it was a whole bunch of rules, and you go to church, and it's so boring, and it's everything. Like, I didn't understand what the relationship with my Creator was. I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand that intimate relationship with Jesus and what He came and did for us. It was just this religious flippin' setup. And so kind of what happened with me happens with thousands of kids, I think. I mean, my father was head of the bar. He's a senior advocate. He brought in Pretoria Bank, Eurobank, the France Accent Bank. He was one of the founders there. He's done some incredible work. I come from a family with, my father's got 2 doctorate degrees, 2 PhDs. My mom was a teacher. So it's not as if we come from a family that, you kind of look at drug addicts on the street and you think, it's those kind of people that do it. It's not. It's families that, well-educated families that these things happen with. And I do believe that love plays a massive role. How the kid experiences love as he grows up plays a massive role. And then your friends. I mean, look, you kind of go to schools today and everything, and there are thousands of people that kind of went the same route. They might not end up with heroin, but I mean, meth is such a big thing. My brother is a meth head. My brother is so cooked on meth, it's not even funny.
Still?
Still, he's my older brother, and he's a super cool dude. He's so talented. He is so incredibly talented. He's got a CFA. He's a chartered financial analyst. I mean, a CFA is like a chartered accountant. It's just a little bit more, he's exceptionally intelligent. He worked at Sun on private investments. He was he's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of money, and he's always had problems with addiction as well. And he fell back into meth, and he can't get out of it. It's hectic. So there's no discrimination when it comes to addiction.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't care about education. It doesn't care about color. It doesn't care about age. If it gets you.
So I want to ask 2 questions, because I've never really been exposed to this kind of scene. So there's 2 things. The first thing is, what's the difference between cocaine and crack cocaine? What is the actual difference?
Oh, okay. So both are cocaine.
Okay.
Both. It's exactly. So what they do with crack is they take. So cocaine you snort.
Mm-hmm.
You can also shoot it. We often had heroin and we put a bit of cocaine in and you call it a snowball. You put cocaine and heroin and you shoot it. It's quite intense, okay? But crack cocaine is you smoke it, so you've got a little, like usually, you'll see a little glass pipe with a gauze.
Oh, yes, okay.
So it's a little rock. You'll get these little pieces. You can buy big moves, big pieces of crack cocaine. Call it golf balls, big fat pieces like this, and you break pieces off and you put it on there and you melt it and you smoke it. But what they do is they take cocaine and then they boil it with bicarb soda. You take bicarb soda with that and some water and stuff, then you boil it into a paste. So now you smoke it instead of snorting it. It's the same feeling, just so much more intense. So much more intense. The up is so much more intense than you take a line, and the down is so much more intense. So it's the drug that will wipe you out financially the quickest.
Is it? Very expensive still.
Crack cocaine. No, it's not that it's so expensive. It's less expensive than cocaine. I mean, you can buy 50 Rand rocks, 100 Rand rocks, you're close to Hillbrow, you can just go, well, today you just find your dealer and he drops it off anyway. But the thing is just you don't stop. You can start smoke it. Once it drops you, you just want another one.
I've heard. So I was watching an interview with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
He was on a podcast, and I was watching this episode, and he said that the big thing about cocaine specifically, which was his drug of choice for many years, he says that every time you use cocaine, it's just a little bit less intense than the previous time. So he says you will forever be chasing the high from the first time you had it. So you'll keep taking more and more and more to try and capture that first high that you ever had. Which I think
is exactly the same with cocaine. It's the exact same thing.
Okay, well, I mean, if it's the same thing, you've just turned it into a different form so that you can consume it differently.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm now clean again. 12 years. 12 years now. I'm clean, sober, no alcohol, no nothing and stuff. If I had to use cocaine today, that same it'll hit me. It will freaking, and then you don't stop because you want to get
that first time feeling. Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing. So. A podcast I listen to quite a lot is Joe Rogan's podcast, and they talk about LSD a lot, and different types of like psilocybin and all these types of hallucinogenics. So is LSD something that you took back in the day as well?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that experience, because what I've heard is that LSD is this like really profound experience, and that it allows you to explore parts of yourself, and someone said I think it was on that podcast or no, it was on a documentary I was watching where someone was describing the experience. They say that if you imagine your brain like a hill that people are skiing down, a hill full of snow, as you use your brain and think, skiers are coming down and they are making paths, and these paths are getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and they say that LSD is like the fresh layer of snow that wipes out all the previous parts and allows you to experience your life in a new way. Is that do you feel like that's bullshit?
Oh, jeez, dude. I mean, that's just somebody that wants to justify his LSD using. I mean, that's just somebody that wants to justify using. So I've had so you get different hallucinogenics, obviously. So LSD, you get different, we used to call them caps, LSD caps. It was a piece of paper about this big. Okay, and there were a whole bunch of different LSD caps, from Daffy Ducks to planets to the Rolling Stones to dots. And I remember one of the worst ones I've ever taken was a Simpson, a double dipped Simpson, which means it was double dipped with LSD, double dipped Bart Simpson. So it is massive. You get different trips on this. I do believe that you are there could be healing properties in it. I know a friend of mine that was a junkie and nothing got him clean, and eventually he went for a ayahuasca treatment in the bush and everything. So you drink this stuff and you just freak out for 2 days.
Yeah, it's like a cactus hallucinogenic.
And it was 2 days. It was the worst trip he's ever gone into. But I mean, eventually he got out and he never used ever again. So that kind of doesn't make sense to me though. But for him, it kind of worked. So there are, and magic mushrooms, and there are a whole bunch of, theories about these things. At the end of the day, because I'm a Christ follower today, I believe, doing these kind of things it's not pleasing to my Father, because I get drunk on something else instead of drunk on the spirit, drunk on what it is, and it will remove me. It will remove me from him. The thing is, if you're high and you're not completely sober, it's very difficult to have a holy relationship with Yahweh, with your Father, with Yeshua. So from a Christian perspective, so that's where I've watched many docus on hallucinogenics and many docs, and there are people actually at the moment that's doing microdosing. Do you know about that?
Yeah. I spoke to Trenton Birch just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
He's the CEO of a company called Chiba Africa.
Yeah.
They in Three Rivers. They have now opened an academy to teach people how to grow cannabis for all different uses. So they teach people how to grow it for medicinal purposes, how to grow it for hemp, how to grow it for the hallucinogenic effects, blah, blah, blah. And the whole idea behind his academy is South Africa is on the cusp of legalizing it totally, and cannabis is difficult to grow properly. So they are basically training farmers right now. And by the time that ball drops and it's legal, they will have people who have the skills and who can apply for the licenses with accreditation to be able to grow it from day one.
So let me tell you what let's just go back to cannabis for a while, because it's a very interesting subject. So I fully believe that CBD is a wonderful, could be used for wonderful medicinal purposes. Okay, of course in South Africa you don't always know kind of what you're buying because it's not really regulated. You don't have an NSF certified kind of third party that will check exactly if you claim to have so many milligrams of CBD, is there so many milligrams of CBD inside that bottle? Because in the States they do that. So here you'll have a guy with his
some parts of the States,
some parts of the States.
They've got their state system. So some states it's illegal, you'll go to jail for the rest of your life, and other states you can buy it from a sweet shop.
So in South Africa, a guy will just go take Swazi brick and kind of make CBD oil from it. So, but let me tell you kind of what happens in the why it's concerning for pot or for cannabis, because once it goes legal, people can sit in their gardens and smoke a joint and whatever. So now the father starts doing it, the son looks at it, kind of this culture. Eventually what's going to happen is it's going to be like alcohol. You can buy it and you can sit and you can relax with your joint and stuff. But what's happening across the world, if you go look at every single country where they've done this, the value system of the family started breaking down. The value system. So you've got people that don't, parents and stuff that start using this. But now, for example, a value of which a whole society is built on is something called integrity. Say what you do and do what you say. For example, that's integrity. That starts slacking because what you say and what you do starts because of you constantly high. So small little things get chipped away on your value system. The value of success, the value of ambition, the value of integrity, the value of parenting, the value of discipline. Discipline starts slacking. Slowly but surely. Discipline from the father that's supposed to lead this house, as a servant leader, starts slacking. Faith, the idea of having people, they slowly but surely move away from faith or old belief systems that actually in the past helped this family and the society. Now they don't do that anymore. So slowly but surely all these societies kind of, disintegrate. And that's what I've got a problem with. And now you can just imagine what's going to happen in South Africa once all of that stuff gets legal. So we're really living in trying times when it comes to the youth. I mean, when it comes to social media, when it comes to all that stuff, it's interesting. It's interesting to see what's going to happen in the next 20, 30 years. Yeah,
I agree. It's what I find interesting. And the other night I was watching live when Reinhard launched his book online, and you were the guy who was interviewing him for the book launch. And that was the first time that I ever noticed how religious you are. Or you've said now, before we started recording, that it's not religion to you, it's relationship. But I'd never noticed how intrinsic that was to you. And I'm hearing it now again on the podcast is more than any guest I've ever had, sort of referencing this. And it's interesting to me. I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist. And people ask me, how long have you been an atheist for? And I think back, And I realized that it's probably been my entire life. And the reason for that is, I mean, even when I went to a Christian school all 12 years,
Yeah.
and I would stand in the hall. We had at my primary school we had praise and worship every Friday afternoon, and at my high school we had it every morning. We had like a prayer, and then on Wednesdays we had a like long hour and a half session. And I felt
that probably killed you, eh?
So let me tell you how this sort of all plays together. So I remember that I used to stand there, especially in high school. This became very apparent because in high school, a lot of people became, people started to choose different paths. People became extremely religious, very, very into it, and other people sort of lost interest. So I remember standing there, and there were these friends that I had who were ultra into it, and they would do praise and worship, and just through song, like there would be no speaking, there would be no stories. Just through song, these people would just break down in tears and they seemed to be having the most euphoric experience ever. And I used to stand there and look at them and wonder what it was that they were feeling, because I'd never felt anything like that before. I spoke to, about a year ago or maybe more, some friends of mine, Ruben, who I've mentioned on this podcast a lot, and then another friend of mine, Armand, both religious guys. I said to them, like, I want to try and just dip my toe back into this. Let's go sit down. I have some questions. Just talk me through it. So we sat down, and I said to them, I've always felt when I had to take part in these religious activities and praise and worship, I've always felt as if I were pretending, because I never felt what anyone else seemed to be feeling, or a few select people would seem to be feeling. And I started to say to them, if I were to just the once feel what these people are feeling, I'd become the most religious person ever. I'd quit everything I'm doing. I'd go study to be the best pastor. I'd go out and spread the gospel, and I would really dedicate my life to this. But I've just never felt that. And then also over time, so now. It really clicked in my head that, well, shit, I am an atheist when I was in high school. And over time, I started to now look at things with a different perspective. Because now, when people say things and they attribute it to, religious reasons, now in my head, I already am coming from a basis of, I don't believe that exists. So now I started to pick up on some things that started to alarm me. And that started to concern me. So I'll give you an example, and I can tie it into what you've said about Survivor. So you said that you would not have won Survivor if it weren't for Christ. Okay, it was
for grace.
Or for grace.
I said I won because of grace.
Grace, right? So from my perspective, if I now don't believe in any gods, any religions, from my perspective, the first thought that I have is you're not giving yourself enough credit. Because from my perspective, you did win without that help, because that help doesn't exist, and thus you are not giving yourself enough credit for that victory. Okay. And I started to notice this everywhere, is that people who achieved amazing things would say, all glory to God, all the glory to God. I never, it began to frustrate me, because I began to feel like, I've seen you work for this.
Yeah.
I know people who did exceptionally well when I was still studying law in first year. People who did exceptionally well in their tests. These are people who sat in the library every single day and just worked themselves to death. And then they get a 92 or a 93 on an exam. They say, all glory to God. I say, no, all glory to you. You did this.
Yeah.
This was on you. You did this out of your own abilities.
I want to share with you quickly. So I can so relate to how you felt at school. I was an atheist and an agnostic, and dude, I wanted nothing to do with it. And I was exactly where you were at. And you know what? Thank you for sharing that and stuff. And then I want to say to you, even though you're not into God, I want to say to you, He's very much into you. Okay, so, and that's kind of what happened with me. He found me. I was always in a way seeking. And I started understanding the difference between atheism and being an agnostic. An agnostic was really somebody that said, listen, I don't believe in the Christian God or this or that, but I have to be open for something, because you don't know 100% of 100% of everything in this world. So if I had to say to you, do you know everything of everything? You're going to say to me, of course I don't know everything of everything. If I had to say to you, do you know half of everything in the world? You're going to say to me, no. Even if I have to say to you, dude, have you experienced even maybe 0.5% of all the life experiences that a living human being can experience during his lifetime? You're going to say to me, no, not even 0.5%. Okay. So that means if I have to say to you, would you agree with me that then let's just say you did know 50% of everything in the world, 50%. Would you agree with me that there is a possibility that God would exist in the other 50% that you just haven't found? So that is a possibility. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but then I have to say, for example, we have explored something. The percentage is lost on me now, but it's small. Let's say 5%. We've explored 5% of the oceans.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we've learned in that 5% leads us to know that there's probably not mermaids in the remaining 95%.
Yeah.
So based on what you do know, you can infer a lot.
No, absolutely. So I'm not what's the word? And who's the apologist? Ravi Zacharias. Have you listened to some of his podcasts?
No, I haven't.
So they're kind of people that argue whether Christ, exists or doesn't exist in religion and all of that stuff. I'll tell you one thing though. I'll say to you, and just from my experience, is that when I came into Narcotics Anonymous, okay, for the first time ever, because I was such a junkie, the 12-step program of Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual program. It's not a religious program, it's a spiritual program. And the first step in Narcotics Anonymous is to say that we admit it, we're powerless over our addiction and our lives that become unmanageable. You have to admit it. You've got to be completely honest with yourself and say, listen, my life is unmanageable. When I start, I don't stop. My family, my relationships, everything is broken. And I realize now it's because of my addiction. Because what addiction does is it undermines all relationships. You can understand that. If you're an addict, that thing comes first. Everything else comes secondary. Okay. So step one is truly a step of surrender. You have to come to a place where you have said to yourself, I have now stood in the ring with Mike Tyson 9 times. And I thought this time I was going to knock him down. And I'm never going to knock him down. I've tried everything else. I'm now surrendering. I'm giving up. I'm putting up the white flag. That's what it means. I'm admitting defeat. Okay? I myself am not going to beat this thing, because you can't stop diarrhea with willpower. It's exactly the same thing. You can't with will beat addiction. It's impossible. You can't do it on your own will. You've got to surrender your will. You've got to let go. Okay. Let go to what? Because addicts don't believe in God. I hated Christianity. I hated my parents. I hated everything. I was in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Muslim. I was in shamanism. I went through everything to kind of find God, and there was nothing. And I didn't find him in the church at all. So step 2 comes, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We came to believe, which is a process, that a power, and that power only had to have 3 things. It has to be loving, caring, and greater than yourself. This power. And that was very easy to find. Even in Narcotics Anonymous groups, when you go to an NA meeting, the group itself is a power greater than yourself, because somehow when you go to this group, you leave there, you're sober, you don't pick up.
Yeah, it's a community.
It's a community. I know people that chose Table Mountain as a power greater than themselves. And it only has to be loving, caring, and greater than yourself. And it wasn't hard to see that. When you look at nature, when you look at creation, when you look at something, when you look at the mountain, when you stand in front of big mountains and you look up in the mountains, you feel this awe. There has to be some power greater than you. You are not the center of the universe. Nothing revolves. Life does not revolve around Hykie Berg. Verstaan jy wat ek sê? I mean, that's very simple to get.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not the center of the universe. There must be something which is greater than me. And that's kind of, you hang on to that. And that was so awesome to me. Because if somebody told me, Hykie, you will get clean only if you have Christ in your life, I would have run away.
Yeah. That's the pamphlet.
I would have said, listen, dude, there we go. I come from the church family. Because my reference and my experience and your experience with school and all of that stuff was just no. I didn't experience love and joy and flipping freedom and all of that stuff. So that's it. And then during that process of learning and, kind of step 3 is made a decision to turn your will over to the care of God as you understand Him, as your understanding of it. Then you go into making a moral inventory. Then you work on your shortcomings. You apologize to people. You make, there's this whole process called the 12-step program. Step 11 says, step 11 says, after prayer and meditation, we improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. Step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of all these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs. So what that basically means is once you've gone through the transformation of all your pain, staying sober and fixing relationships and everything, once you get to the end, you realize that you've had an awakening of the spirit. You're a different human being. And that's what I just want to share with you. And if ever this means anything to you, I don't know if this is the right forum to speak about it now, and we can do it again, absolutely, and talk about religion, Christianity, and all of that stuff. It's very interesting. I'd love to chat with you. Is that Christianity is not a feeling. It's not a feeling. Many people wait for God to touch them and wait to have this great, awesome experience. It's not a feeling. It's a relationship. It's a relationship thing. Life is not going to change. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. There's going to be so many things. But for the first time ever, it doesn't feel to me that I'm running away from danger. I'm running towards a place of safety. I'm not running away from darkness. I'm running towards a place of light.
I find that so interesting because I feel like if you say that it's not a feeling, and it's because I think it would be so fantastic if I were to experience something or see something that I couldn't explain in any way other than to say, well, this must be God, this must be it, this must be what I've been told about and what people have been saying for the longest time. This would be great. But when you say that it's a relationship is a two-way street, right? So if you say that it's not a feeling, that friend I was talking about, we had a cup of coffee just before he went back to Stellenbosch. We had a cup of coffee, and the reason why we wanted to have that cup of coffee, or why I invited him, was because I was worried about him. Because he's not an alcoholic, but he's close. He drinks a lot. He's had a lot of problems that have been associated with alcohol, and I needed to. And he's now obviously been, we'll say, clean for a year because of lockdown. He's been living with his parents, but now he's off to Stellenbosch again. So I sat down with him and I said to him, I want to tell you this from a place of caring, but I am genuinely worried about you going back into this place because you're now walking back into the place where you previously had all these tendencies for alcohol. And we spoke about it for a long time, and he understood where I was coming from, and we spoke through like a game plan. Then he said to me, listen, I'm actually so glad that you have started, because when you invited me for this coffee, there was something I wanted to talk to you about too. And I said, I wasn't expecting that. I said, okay, well, get out with it then. What is it? And he said that he's worried that I don't put effort into friendships. Or not put effort, but that I don't seek friendships, and I don't see my friends very often. So I will have, for example, with the podcast, I'll have people who I see every week. I'll have people I have meetings with every week. But these are all people that I work with. These are people that I'm only seeing once every now and again, and we're only discussing the matter at hand and so on. So he basically gave me the speech about how he was worried because whilst he was back here in the area, he noticed that he was the only person that I was really chatting with about things that were bothering me and unloading with. And he then said once he leaves, he's worried that I will not have that anymore. So this cup of coffee that I had with him was a very profound experience for me, because what I realized was that it was very much a two-way street. I cared very much about him, despite the fact that I knew I wasn't going to see him for many months. I mean, his life is going to have nothing to do with mine for a long time, and I'll only see him maybe at best 3 times for the rest of the year. And he knew the same about me. As we knew that we would we would lose a bit of contact over the course of the year. And yet still, there was genuine concern for the other party's well-being, enough concern to confront the issue, to talk about it openly, and to try and get the other person in a mindset that will benefit them in the long run. So when I think of a relationship, a really good, beneficial, mutual relationship, that cup of coffee is what pops into my head. Because I left that cup of coffee feeling really cared for and appreciated, and also, like you would say, it's safe in the fact that there was someone who genuinely cared for my interests. So tell me, if you're now in a relationship with the Lord, how does that give and take, how does that manifest itself? Okay, or is it a different thing altogether?
No, it's a very good question. Thank you for that. And absolutely. So one thing that, let's just start at the beginning quickly. So people will not fully grasp the idea of following Jesus if you don't understand the fall of what happened there when sin entered into the world, and what Jesus came and did for us to pay the price, because somebody had to pay the price, and he came and paid the price. So if you understand that completely, you first of all fall so in love with him for what he's done for you. Now that has to, you absolutely know. What happened with me was that became a complete reality. I've seen it, I've experienced it, I have lived it, I have, so, and I started falling completely in love with him. But you have to, first of all, you can only receive something from a friend if you're open to receive. Okay, so you're receiving his compassion and his care and everything because you love him and you trust him and you want to walk this journey with him as a friend, and you're open and you are transparent, and your soil in your heart it's good soil, because you want to introduce all the seeds that he wants to plant in you, good seeds, friendship seeds, and all of that stuff. You're ready to receive it. So you've got to be in that place when it comes to your relationship with God or your Creator. If you're not in a place like that, then you must understand one thing. As human beings, we are so powerful. We've got such greatness inside of you. God has invested so much. He's given you so much power that even you can close the door of entry to the Creator of the universe. He's given you that power. He's given you self-will. Because he'll never force himself onto you, ever. He'll never force himself. He's never going to, he'll chase you down for, until the day that you die for your salvation's sake. But he's never going to push yourself into it. That's up to us. He already chose us first. Do you know why they say love is a choice? Do you know why they say it?
Tell me.
Okay, so, and that's why they say, that God is love. They always used to say God is love, and, love is a choice and all of that stuff. And I never really understood it until one day I realized. So if people talk about why do we have self-will? We can either choose God or don't choose God or whatever and stuff. Why did he do that? Like why, so if we weren't given self-will, in other words, for us to be able to choose, there would have been no point for creation. From a Christian perspective, if you were God and you wanted to create something on earth, you wanted to create something, creating humans, but not creating robots that would just serve him and love him all the time without having a choice. Because relationships can only exist when there's self-will. When I choose to be your friend, I choose to love you, I choose to respect you, I choose to be loyal to you, I choose to say to people, listen, JC's a rock star. Don't talk like that about JC. I choose to say that. That proves my depth of loyalty and depth of friendship to you. There has to be a choice. So that's why God gave us choice, so that we can freely choose him, because he chose us first. That's why love is not a feeling as well. Love is not a feeling. In love is maybe the process, there's butterflies and so wonderful and stuff, but then love becomes a choice. I choose to open the door for my wife. Doesn't matter how much we fought. I choose to open the door for her before she comes into the car. I choose to hold her at night, even though we might be angry for her. I choose to pull the seat out every single time before she goes and sits. I choose to do it, even though I feel like I don't want to. I choose to do it. It's a choice. It's not an emotional thing. It's not because I don't act because of my emotions. I don't let fear drive me. I don't let fuzzy feelings drive my behavior. It's my convictions that drive my behavior. It's my character that drives my behavior. So it is a choice. I I might look at another girl and go, oh, geez, that woman's hot. I choose not to go and be unfaithful to my wife because I love my wife. That's what's a choice. Same with God. I have to choose Jesus Christ. Okay. And the way it looks to me is that His Holy Spirit, once you've allowed that in your life and you have literally given it, you see what people do is people go, okay, God, I'm here. Now I want you to see flipping, and then I want to see angels and fires burn. And I think it just doesn't work that way.
But how does it work? Because I've also, I mean, so you've said that once you understand all of the things that Christ has done for us and all that, if you're at a position where you now need to choose a path, and path A is believing that everything in the Bible is true, going into this really really spiritual and faithful life and living the way that the Bible would want you to live, and path B is saying that you don't think.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you there now. So,
yes,
what do you think is living the way the Bible would? What do you think it's all about?
So let me tell you. There's a book that I've ordered on Take-A-Lot. It's called The Godless Gospel,
Okay.
and this book asks the question. It says, most historians agree that Jesus Christ was a real person who existed. Whether you believe in Christianity and the entire religious system or not, they believe that Jesus was a person. And he was a philosopher. You know, he spoke a lot about ideals and about things like the pillars of Christianity. He spoke a lot about these things, and that's reflected in the Bible as well as his teachings and so on. And the book, which I haven't read yet, is it asks this question about, okay, if we take Christianity and we remove the question completely of is it real or is it not real, is it a good system to live your life by still, you know? And I have to say, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, I think it still is a good system to live your life by.
Absolutely.
I think that the philosophies are solid. I feel like that's why it's been so incredibly successful, is because it's very well designed to make sure that individuals and their community have a good relationship. It's very well designed to make sure that there is a positive net outcome for groups of people and societies and so on. So I feel like there's that quote by Marcus Aurelius, I think is how you say his last name. He says, live a good life. If there is a God and He is just, then He will accept you based on the life that you have lived. If there is a God and He is unjust, then you should not wish to serve Him.
But that's not Christianity.
No.
Yeah. So I want to just talk to you about a good life quickly. So you must remember one thing. So the way we consider ourselves good and the way God considers ourselves good are two completely different things. So it doesn't matter how good you think you are. You're not good God says in the Word, you're like filthy rags. So what happens is Christianity is not about behavior. That's what people think. When I become a Christian, now I've got to do X, Y, and Z. Now I'm going to take service and I must go pray and I must go to church and I must just be, that's absolute rubbish. It's absolute rubbish.
So what is the reality?
Christianity is God saying, it doesn't matter what you do, you'll never live up to my standard. You can't be on this treadmill. That's why Jesus came. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, those were the guys that says you've got to go to church, you've got to read the Bible, you've got to do all these good works. It's all based on merit and good work. And all other religions in the world is based on good work. Karma, this, that, you've got to do your good work. It's going to be weighed up one day and everything. All the good that you do. Christianity is the only God, Jesus, is the only one that came and break it and said that that's rubbish. Nothing you do or don't do is going to make God love you any more or less. You can't. Nothing that you do ever will get you salvation. It's not in your doing. It's all in what Christ has done for you. All you need to do is accept it. In other words, He has paid that price for you. You are going to flip it. Let's call it sin. I hate that word. You are going to cock up in your life. You're going to make so many mistakes in your life. So many mistakes. But that's why Jesus came. He's paid for that as well. You see, it's the blood of Christ that has that's paid that price, and now you're free. You don't have to be stuck in shame and guilt anymore, because nothing you do or don't do is going to remove it.
So as long as you accept it, you are fine.
But now what happens is, you accept it, but then what happens is, it doesn't mean now you can just do whatever you want to do. That's not what it means. If you've truly accepted Christ and you understand, your behavior automatically will start changing because you start loving Him. You start loving Him. That's it. You just start loving Him. And as you love Him, that's the thing. That's in that book, Ultimate Survival. I'm actually bringing you a copy.
This morning, last night I was thinking I need to message Hykie. I want to ask him, bring a copy
give some
of
books
the
away
book.
for the viewers as well.
I'll buy a copy off of you.
I'll bring a copy, but what I want to say that book just quickly.
Reinhard gave me this amazing copy of his book. With, he wrote in it. So I thought I must tell him, and then it was too late. Okay. And then this morning I woke up, I thought I must tell him, and when I checked my messages, you told me you'd already left for set. So I thought, shit, I'll go buy it at the shop.
But just to quickly, end off this, because there's a couple of things I want to speak about, because we can talk about this for hours. It's just, in that book I talk about how he revealed himself to me little by little by little. You see, once you give God a chance, you've got to give him a chance to reveal himself to you, and you've got to trust and have faith in that process. You see, most people pray for angels and burning bushes. I promise you now, if you had to see an angel fly right through here now and was a true angel with whatever and stuff, you would end up in Westkoppies. Because you'll probably go, oh, geez, it's the LSD probably from 10 years ago that's suddenly kicking in. Because you won't be able to spiritually be in that place to accept whatever's happening is holy and just. You'll probably end up in
when I was a teenager, I very specifically remember, you have to remember, this was not something that just happened.
No,
I didn't just decide I'm an atheist. This was a battle, because for a long time I thought, yes, of course I am religious, and I had to then confront the fact that I had been pretending not only to other people but to myself, because I had never experienced anything that came with the statement of yes, I am religious.
But you know what I'm looking forward to, Jason?
Yeah?
Is to again, because you know what's going to happen now. I'm going to pray for you.
Well, I hope something happens.
I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to pray that, and all I ask from you is don't deliberately just shut your up from, because remember now, if God is really real, then heaven and hell is also really real. And that means you can miss your purpose on this planet completely.
Yeah, of course.
You're going to miss your purpose and your calling because you were born, the word says you're born with a purpose and a plan, and there's a specific calling on your life. You've got greatness inside of you. You've got world-changing potential. You can change. You can freaking. You want to move into the promises and the abundance of God. Okay, so, and you want that, of course. If it's true, wouldn't you want that?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, you remind me so much of my mate, Eddie.
So listen, I'm just going to say, so I'm going to pray for you. And then in 5 years down the line, I'm going to pray that God really, in such a gentle way, I'm going to pray that I don't want to sit here and go, JC, I'm going to pray that you open your eyes, because I'm not judgmental. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I love, like I said, I love you. That's the problem with most Christians. We're called to love people, not to convert people. I have to love you and accept you.
It's an example thing. Yeah.
Well, not just set an example of such a goody two-shoes. Who wants to be a bloody goody two-shoes? There are too many goody two-shoes out there. They piss me off, man. They irritate these goody two-shoes people. No, godly people. But you see, I want to. It's not just being an example. It's about loving you and accepting and loving the brokenness in people, loving the prostitutes, loving the junkies, loving the people that are so far away, removed from God. Really, really loving them, not going in with an agenda to convert them. Because that's just being dodgy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
People just need to see the love that you have for people, and the Holy Spirit will do the conviction. That's what we're called to do.
Okay, fair. Because I mean, it's like when I was starting the story, the thing I wanted to say is I remember specifically like grade 9, grade 10, lying in bed at home, and like in the middle of the day, just lying on my bed and battling with this inside of me and trying to figure out where I stood. And like you sit and you just look around the room and you think to yourself, all right, like this is the moment. If something just happens, if a book falls over right now, that will be enough. Like just, if I flip this coin and it just stops spinning in the air and lands flat, like just something I couldn't explain. Anything at all, the smallest thing. If that were to happen right now, a draft inside the house, if that were to happen, that's the moment.
But you see, here's the one thing: God is not a show-off, and He doesn't need to prove Himself. He operates in complete esteem with Himself.
But don't you think that what that means is that a lot of people on the planet miss out on this salvation because they were 99.9% there, and that last leg up that God could have given them into this holy and godly life, that's missed.
But then you're completely taking out the consideration of faith and trust and believing in God's word. So you're completely just removing that from the. So then those people what were they really seeking then? You understand? If you believe that God, the word is the inspired word of God, you wouldn't want Jesus to talk to you audibly because he's talking to you through the word. You see, and you become, as you abide in him and he becomes abides in you, as that process happens and matures. Because remember one thing, you can become a Christian and be on a pink cloud for 3 months and go, wow, and all of a sudden one day you wake up and go, oh, no, I just don't feel so great anymore.
Yeah, it's over. There's the buzz
all of a sudden, for you started connecting faith with your feelings. It's just such a immature faith. Faith matures over time. That eventually, the mature Christian is not seeking signs and wonders at all. You give that up completely. God is in the mundane. God is in the ordinary. God is everywhere. Then you start, as you abide in him and him in you, and with a word, then that thing becomes alive, my brother. Then let me tell you, I can die tonight. A guy can put a gun against my head and say, tell me that Jesus Christ doesn't exist. It's just never ever going to happen. I can't wait for the day. And that's kind of where real joy comes in. You know, people confuse joy and happiness so often. You know, joy is this internal knowing, this thing that doesn't matter what happens around you. My freaking wife can die. Yes, of course I'm going to be very sad, but I've got this steadfast joy that she is where she's supposed to be and I can carry on and move on and when I'm going to meet my Creator. I mean, all I think about nonstop is heaven, what it's like, you know, living in eternity with God Almighty, praising, worship, drinking wine with Him. It says that you're going to drink wine with Him. You know, I study Revelation, I study with all this. Like I have this eternal mindset. You know, that's where you're going to live for the rest of my life. And then it makes this little earth and the challenges of this so...
Like small. My school once on those Wednesdays that we did praise and worship, they took a rope, or not a rope, like not quite a string. You know, there's really.
And they said, "This is your life," and then yes.
Yeah, they take the rope, they dip like the last 2% of the rope, they dip in some red paint.
Oh yeah.
And then they give it to everyone. Gets a rope on the way in, and obviously we were a bunch of high school kids, you know, chucking them around and blah blah blah, and they say to you, yeah, so. If you look at this rope, this little red bit is your life on earth, and then. But I heard an interesting thing. So, do you know Ricky Gervais?
Yeah.
Ricky Gervais did a show called Afterlife.
Yes, I know.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Great comedy and also asked a lot of good questions.
Yeah, fantastic analysis of grief and how people move through grief and so on. So I would really recommend it to anyone listening. But he has this scene where. He's working with a Christian woman, and the woman says to him, so you don't believe that there's any God at all? And he says no. And she says, well, what's the point then? If we're just going to die and that's going to be the end of it, then what's the point of life? And he says, precisely because there's an end, that makes every day that I'm here so precious, because it's the last one. You know, once my time is up, that's game over. So that pushes me to want to say, I'm going to make the most of everything. I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to leave a legacy behind, because I feel like if you are of the belief that only 1% or 0.1% of your total spiritual life is going to be this life on earth, then it doesn't really matter. Nothing you do here really matters. Is that your perspective?
No, that's not true. So of course, you know, I believe that that you've got. Have you read Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life?
Okay, Tell me about it.
Yeah. Okay. So that book is probably the most sold book on purpose across the world. I think it has sold 100 million copies. It's called A Purpose Driven Life. Now, it's difficult for somebody that's not a Christian to read that book, because he constantly references back to the Bible and everything. If you're not a Christian, you're going to go and say, but who says the Bible is flippant true? So that's the space I always used to be in. But you're talking about Paul this and Psalm this and that, but okay, so God wants you. I mean, you know, you've been given talents, and you've been given gifts, and you've been given all those things. And of course, in the beginning, as you kind of grow up, you want to become successful, and everybody wants to grow successful and become more than what they're supposed to be. But meaning, remember, true meaning in life comes with relationships and can only come through serving. True meaning in life comes from serving people, serving other people. You can't have true meaning, fulfilled meaning, for the feeling that you kind of, you know, that joy, that fulfillment, that knowing that you you can't have that.
You made a difference. Yeah.
You can't have that without service.
No, I agree with
So
you.
serving. So if you want to contribute your life to serve other people, Jesus also said it. He said, if you want to be great, if you want to be famous, if you want to be rich, if you want to be healthy, wealthy, if you want to be this, if you want to serve the many. That's what he said. He said, serve. If you want to be great, if you want to be awesome, if you want to step into that place of power and everything, because if you help enough people get what they want, you will eventually get what you want. Serve the many. Great. What people do is they don't work that way. People just work for themselves. It's just getting as much as they possibly can. And living in that kind of lifestyle is atrocious because you're so worried and scared that you're not going to have enough because this is all that there is. And Christians don't believe that. We just don't believe that. We
Okay,
believe
fair. I understand your perspective.
You understand what I'm saying? So, but let me tell you what is incredible in my life. So, yes, I've been in the acting industry, and we should actually make another podcast, after this. Right?
Yeah, we'll do a podcast after the podcast.
We'll do a podcast after the
Go
podcast.
get a burger or something.
Yeah. Or actually, so what is incredible is I've been in entertainment for the last 20 years or so. And we need to do a podcast just on the business model entrepreneurial, because I'm very entrepreneurial. I wasn't born an entrepreneur, you know that. You learn and you can, with a lot of personal development and a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that you do through life, you can learn to do it. And I got into the industry of direct distribution. I don't know if you know the business model of direct distribution. And what we do on part-time, myself and Geraldine, is help people make residual income online across the world. And we have in 2 years, and anybody can do this. That's the hope out there. It's so flippin' exciting to know that you can help anybody make. It's never been easier to get to a place of financial freedom than ever before in South Africa and across the world. People just don't know what they don't know. They just don't know what they need to do. And we started getting involved, and it took us about 2 years to get to a place of complete financial freedom. And that's my mission today. My heart and my mission today isn't acting at all anymore. You shouldn't even watch the rubbish.
I picked up. Sorry, I just want to sort of interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
So the other day, I was sitting at my laptop and working, and Binnelanders was on, and I get a call. I'm literally talking to my folks about the podcast that we're going to do, and here comes my phone, Hykie Berg, calling, and I say, "Yes, speak of the devil." So
when I said to you, are you watching the rubbish?
Yeah, I walk outside. I say, Hykie, I was just watching you on TV. Hykie's first line to me: "Do you watch that rubbish? Don't you lose brain cells as you watch it?" I thought it was so fantastic, and it was mirrored in Arnu. So Arnu and I, he's been on Blood and Water, and we spoke afterwards. So there's this one line in Blood and Water that I just think was so ridiculous and so poorly written, where Arnu's character is sitting on a wall, and this other guy comes to confront him about something that's happened. The guy's played by Tabang, who I'm hoping to talk to as well. Tabang says to him, he says, "I know you made that video." And Arnu stays quiet, and he goes, "Say something." And Arnu's character just looks at him and says, "Something." And I took a video of that.
Okay.
I sent the video to my girlfriend. And I'm sitting at this restaurant with Arnu. I'm like, "Listen, man, I love the show. It was great, but what is this?" I played it for him.
I'm going to sit here. I'm going to text you now, and I'm going to say, "Arnu, say something." What was his character's name?
Chris. So I said to him, what even is this line? How did this line get through a table read? How did this line get approved? And why didn't you just say something while this line was happening? Why didn't you say, "Man, this is so ridiculous"? He just puts his face in his hands like this. He looks at me. He's like, "I don't know, man. I don't know."
I just texted Chris. Say something. Let's see if he's going to say. See if he's going to reply. No, well, look. The reason I have that response is there's a little method in the madness, because it immediately kind of breaks. When you meet people on the street, and yes, we're on an Afrikaans show, and we've done some incredible work, and you kind of have a bit of a profile out there. So when people see you and they want to approach you, there's always that bit of it could be uncomfortable for that person or whatever. And stuff. So the moment they start talking, I drop that line, and immediately people feel comfortable.
Okay, I see.
Immediately people go, "Oh, okay, geez, he's not taking himself too seriously." But you get actors that take themselves very seriously. So if you take yourself too seriously as an actor, people are going to go, oh, geez, no, he's a chop, eh?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I see. Arno replied, what did he say?
So if a JC, I would lack of years. Arno, we're doing a great series. He's on, we're sending my voice out. Say, how's the team?
How's it, Arno? We're recording right now. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant. So I want to sort of, we've been talking about religion, we've been talking about a lot of different things. I want to see if we can pivot this conversation a little bit about ADHD that you suffer from, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, because this is something that you've been very vocal about as well.
Yeah, so the second book I wrote was on mental illness and really focusing on ADHD. So if anybody out there that has read the book, it's quite, I just talk about my journey, and the reason I wrote the book is because I ended up in a treatment facility because of the medication, the Ritalin, Concerta, and all of that stuff. So
you got addicted to the Ritalin.
Yeah.
Because Ritalin and Concerta, there's a documentary on Netflix called "Take Your Pills," I think, and it explains that Ritalin and Concerta, they're great, but they are grossly overprescribed. And the problem is when you're taking Concerta, it's basically a meth microdose. That's what it is. It's the same substance. It's a methamphetamine, but you're taking a tiny little bit of it.
Methylphenidate is the same as methamphetamine. So methylphenidate is the active ingredient in Concerta, Ritalin, and in Adderall, it's methamphetamine. So you've got those three meds, Adderall, Concerta, and Ritalin. If you give Ritalin and Concerta to anybody, doesn't matter who you are, you will find a boring task enduring. You will be able to finish what you start. You will be able to focus and concentrate, because that's what meth does. That's what amphetamine does. So, and because I had such, now I must tell you, there is value to it. I'm not saying that there isn't value. With a lot of people, it really, it's like the third wheel that they're using because they can't ride their two-wheel bicycle at the moment. So they've got a little third wheel, and it's helping them for a while. But the problem today is people are not diagnosed correctly. In South Africa, what are the parameters of being diagnosed? I mean, you've got a teacher that says, "Oh, JC can't sit still. It's going to, put it on my written."
So Hykie, about 2 years ago, I went into an office to be tested for ADHD. I sat down because my mom has it. She's been diagnosed for a long time. So I sit down. She gives me this form to fill in. Okay, so the form has like 12 questions on it. It's like, do you struggle to concentrate sometimes? Do you find that your mind wanders? Blah, blah, blah. So I fill it in, honestly, as you're supposed to do. I give it back. She gives it a look. She's like, well, it's clear to me that you do have ADHD. My mind was blown sitting right there thinking, like, is this it? There's no brain scan. It is
absolutely crazy. So let me just give you perspective. So in France, Sweden, there are many countries out there where medicine is the last option. Like literally, that 2% of all people in France that are diagnosed with ADHD receives medication.
Yeah, it should be the last option.
It should be the last option. So what they do there is they come into your house, they look at social, they look at trauma, they look at kind of discipline, they look at diet, they look at all kinds of things. So what's happening in the world is because, and you really have to do a lot of research to kind of try and understand what it is that I'm trying to say in the book, is that we're living in a society today which is called the society of distraction. Society has ADHD. I mean, all over. Never again, ever have we lived in a society where there's so many distractions and so many things happening.
Did you watch the Social Dilemma?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Yeah,
exactly that. So the way that, and if you watch the Social Dilemma and you read, if you read the latest book from Simon Sinek, he wrote a book called "It Starts With Why." Leaders Eat Last. He's the most requested TED speaker in the world, Simon Sinek. Get his books. You will love it. It's going to help you so much with your business. So the way that these things, cell phones and social media and information, is the effect it has on our minds and our thinking, creates the symptoms as if we've got ADHD because we're all over the place and stuff. Because these things, cell phones releases dopamine. Every single time you get a WhatsApp or an email or a like and stuff, it releases a little bit of dopamine. You get hooked on the dopamine. You're back on your cell phone.
Yeah. And isn't that crazy? That you can become physically dependent on something that your brain produces. Like you don't need to take anything. It's already there, but you are basically microdosing yourself.
The whole time, yeah.
They also say
and it's creating pathways that you're going to start you're going to start like those skiers.
Yeah.
You are now busy creating.
So something they say in the documentary, which was this like light bulb moment for me, where it really was visually represented. They talk the entire documentary about how things are designed to be targeted at human addiction. They talk about how like they have teams of psychologists working at Facebook and Instagram to engineer these apps to keep you engaged for as long as possible, because the longer you spend on the app, the more ads they can show you and the more money they make. So this is coming from Tristan Harris, who invented the like button. Okay, so he's talking about one of the concepts that they brought in at a stage, which is where you pull your screen down and there's that little load, and then it refreshes with new content. Like, you can literally sit there and pull that thing 10 times, and every time it'll give you new content. So he's talking about how he was there when they were developing this. And the inspiration for this idea came from slot machines, like gambling slot machines, where you sit, you pull the lever, it spins, and then bam, you either win or you lose or whatever. And those slot machines obviously have been tried and tested to be really brilliant, because every time you feel like, next time. So they just took that exact concept and they put it in an app to engage that same thing. So what we've now all become, obviously we're not gambling with our money, we're gambling with our attention. And what we've become are gambling addicts on our phones. Because you swipe down, and the win is you see something that's going to engage your attention, and the loser is you're not going to see anything. So you swipe and you swipe and you swipe. Or on the alternative side, we've all got endless scroll now. Those endless scrolls were not put in for convenience. They were put in because it keeps people engaged longer. You scroll down, scroll. Every time you move your thumb, what's the next thing going to be? Is it going to engage me? Is it going to be something I enjoy? So we have become gambling addicts on our phones.
Yeah, and we've become slaves to the distraction. So, and in Korea and in Japan, they've got social media. It's now diagnosed as a mental illness. They've got massive recovery programs for people that, just the other day, 2 Chinese people were found dead in front of with adult nappies on. Now that you're talking about people getting so addicted, I was in Las Vegas 4 years ago. I was there for 10 days for a conference, an entrepreneurial conference. And did you know that the highest selling pharmaceutical item in Las Vegas is adult nappies?
Because you can just sit and play.
People just don't want to get up from there. So it's really quite ridiculous. But so just to get back to what's happening in South Africa. So across the world, it is changing slowly, but the school system has never changed in the last 100 years, ever. But we live in society, and because of modernity, everything's changing around us, and it has changed so fast, yet the school system has never adapted, and it's never changed. So you're sitting with a school system where you've got kids, millennials and Generation Z kids today, and you shove them in a school system that's 100 years old. So how does that kind of function and work? So you've got this kid that still can't concentrate because at home he's just a normal millennial playing with all these things.
Millennial might be a bit outdated, because millennials are in their late 20s already. The Z's.
So you've got these kids, kind of going into the school, and now, just because they can't concentrate or whatever, and I understand the teachers as well. I understand their frustration. I understand that they, get so, because you want these kids to kind of pass. So the best way to do it is to drug them and get them just through the school system. And a teacher is not allowed. I deal with this very, very often. I get an email where they say the teacher said my kid must go, get Ritalin, and that's criminal. The teacher's not allowed to say that. He or she doesn't have the expertise to do it. It's absolutely criminal. They're not allowed to do that. And there are different ways to maintain this. So I can't use the medication. I found the most amazing products, natural products that I order from Dallas, Texas, and can't buy them online, that help me with a natural way of getting all my meds. I was on about 5,000 rands of chronic medication, because apart from ADHD, I was diagnosed with bipolar, depression, anxiety disorders, a whole bunch of things because of my drug addiction as well. That obviously amplifies mental illness. And over the years, I've just
slowly phased it out.
Slowly but sure. But it's a combination of social skills, your relationship with God, healthy eating, healthy sleeping, healthy. If people want to kind of get healthy from mental illness and problem stuff. It's really a decision that you've got to make, that you want to get to a place of wellness, and it's a holistic approach. It's always a holistic approach. Even with ADHD and stuff, there's not, people are looking for silver bullet solutions, medicine or this or that, or help my kid. It's not like that. It's a lifelong journey that you have to walk. And often with ADHD, it is a diet problem. You can change a kid's behavior so much, just getting him to make sure that he gets in the right food and right nutrition.
So what do you mean by that? Like, are you talking about things like blood sugar spikes that a lot of kids are very exposed to?
A whole bunch of things. So it's blood sugar, it's fizzy drinks, it's nutrition. It's not just that. You see, there are micronutrients that we're supposed to get into our diet that we're not receiving in at all anymore. It doesn't even matter. You can go to Woolies and buy the best fruit and veggies that you're not going to get it in because of what society has made food out to be. So most of the micronutrients, glyconutrients, plant sterols that we were designed to have in our bodies constantly through diet does not exist because of green harvesting and pesticides, artificial, whatever.
One of the big ones is it's absolutely crucial to our survival is B12. So B12 is this thing that when you go vegan, people will tell you like, holy shit, man, you've got to be taking that B12 because it's well known that B12 only comes from animal products and all that, which is bullshit. B12 comes from soil. And the reason why most people have B12 deficiencies nowadays is because we wash our veggies to death, which isn't a bad thing, obviously. I mean, we should wash our veggies, but we remove all of the B12 from our veggies before we consume them. And then people say, yeah, that's why you need animal products. Animals are given B12 supplements in their water. Like, animals don't produce B12 either. And animal feed has gone from a cow walks, it picks up a piece of grass that's full of soil, it's eating it, blah, 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 to now animals are being given clean, sterile feed coming out of steel troughs and stuff like that. So I agree with you. I only know about B12, but I could see how our agricultural processes could have removed a lot of micronutrients.
Yeah, so what happens is with all fruits and veggies and everything, when it gets plucked when it's green, and it kind of gets ripe along the way. So the last 48 hours before a fruit falls from the trees, when the last glyconutrients and stuff gets formed. So it doesn't exist in our fruit and our veggies. I've been to I'm not going to say which fruit farm, but I give you a guess how long farmers can keep apples in a cold freezer or storeroom before it goes to the shelves.
How long
can they do that?
A long time.
How long?
Months.
3 years.
Years. Holy shit, man. Yeah, it's a long time. My father works in wholesale, and I told you he used to have a fruit and veg in Vereniging. So retail is food retail is in the DNA of my family big time. So my father told me, I once asked him on the way back from Pretoria, I asked him in the car, I said to him, I don't really understand the role of consultancy companies. Could you just explain to me, like in the context of where you work, which is Massmart right now, what does a consultancy company do? He says, no, a consultancy company comes in and they will, for example, they want to see how to extend the shelf life of a product. So they will go to the source of where the product is and they will follow one apple through the whole journey up until it ends on the shelf to see where the problems are. Like, has this apple at some point just sat in a hot truck for half an hour and that's completely halved its shelf life or whatever? And through this chatting, he told me that onions are harvested for a week every year. So if you are eating an onion within like a week or two of that harvest, you're getting a fresh onion, right? If you're eating an onion at any other point during the year, you're eating an onion that's been sitting in a warehouse for a long time. Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that's terrible and we should stop eating onions. It's fine. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is it is shocking how long the shelf life of a vegetable is if it's stored in a warehouse.
Quickly, if you had to, and this is science, this is fact, one orange in 1952 equals 10 oranges today for the same amount of vitamin C. 52 peaches today, vitamin B, equals 1 peach in 1952.
Why is that?
Because of this, because of green harvesting and pesticides, because of the food making and food delivering to the human population there's so much pressure to get food out there that we're just not receiving quality anymore. Today, it's not 3 to 5 portions of fresh fruits and vegetables. It's 10 to 13 or 15,
to get the same stuff.
So there are companies out there that have actually filled that gap in the market, especially glycans, micronutrients that your body needs in order for cell-to-cell communication that you need. And in the Western world, there's only 2 of the 8 left in food. You need to get the other 6 in. You can only do that with intelligent supplementation. So obviously, there's also a whole discussion of what do you buy? What kind of supplements do you buy? Some people believe in supplements, other people don't. I wouldn't buy anything natural in South Africa because it's not regulated in South Africa. So these products I purchase online. It's incredible, and that has helped me to get off all my medication. It wasn't just the products, but I receive on very, very good products. And I think supplementation, intelligent supplementation, is an absolute. When it comes to somebody with mental illness, it is a must. It's not an option. It is an absolute must. It can really help alleviate many things, not just your mood and everything, but from your cognitive ability to your overall wellness and stuff. So I wrote this book on ADHD, and obviously a lot of people didn't like the book because I really spoke into the medical industry. So I mean, doctors and specialists and stuff, they may spend maybe just 3 months on the entire degree on something like nutrition. So and because when you speak about a subject like ADHD, I'm not a psychiatrist so that was difficult for me to speak into that industry because I don't have the degree behind my name. So I spoke from my own experience, but I did speak about the dilemma out there today when it comes to over-describing, when it comes to, we're in this pill generation and everybody's just using pills for whatever, from benzodiazepines to flipping pain tablets to whatever. So it's just to make people aware that, listen, there's a different side to this whole story, Your child does not have to be on a Schedule 6 flipping amphetamine drug dose
just to get through school.
And also, if your child doesn't get a distinction, that doesn't mean he's a failure and he's not going to make it out there. I mean, I was a useless bugger at school, and we've created massive success today. So yeah, it's this whole idea of society really just taking care of the people that really do well. And if you don't do well according to the standards of society, you are, less than or a dropout and everything. And that's just rubbish. So
yeah, I get it. I understand. I mean, I was prescribed Ritalin when I first was diagnosed, and I was diagnosed at the start of my 3rd year, which was just months before the lockdown started, and I took it for about a week and a half, going to campus every day, and it's great for a lot of things because I found that I could really you just add things to the pile and they just get done and it's great. But and I was very aware of the common side effects. I asked my girlfriend, who you met now, I asked Asita, and I asked some of my mates on campus. I said to them, I'm going on Ritalin now. If you notice anything, if you notice a change in me over time, if you notice something's just a little bit off, I don't know if I'm going to pick up on it, so just let me know, And I simply wasn't on it for long enough for them to notice anything, because I developed some really hectic physical side effects. So I'll give you an example. Dry mouth, okay? Yeah. So you hear about dry mouth and you think, dry mouth is a bit shit, and we've all had dry mouth from something or another. But the dry mouth that I got from the Ritalin, it was like mouth, throat. I felt like my insides were dry, and it was scary to me because it made me feel sick. It made me feel nauseous, and the nausea wasn't coming from anything else. The nausea was a result of the dryness, and also this is something which freaked me out. So when your mouth gets really, really dry, suddenly there's no lubrication anymore. So your teeth are grinding up on your lips, and your gums are grinding up on each other, and stuff like that. So I started to develop these sores in my mouth that would bleed.
It's a very common side effect.
Right. I had bleeding sores in my mouth for this week and a half, And people told me, it'll go away, it's fine. But like my tongue I couldn't speak without pain, and I just thought, I was doing okay. I was doing just fine. Anxiety? I've never experienced anxiety in any form. People have.
Could you sleep at night?
No, I did struggle with some insomnia. Especially the first few days was quite difficult. But I got around that by taking the Ritalin at about 5:30 in the morning. So by the time I went to sleep, it was out of my system. But it was hectic. So I thought to myself, I was doing just fine before I had this drug. I did well in school. I never had Ritalin. I didn't do well in my first 2 years of varsity, which is why I was on this drug in the first place. But I did well by my own standards, as in I always say to people when people say to me, you did so well in school, why was your first year of varsity such a shit show? It wasn't because I couldn't cope. It was because I couldn't care less about the degree I was doing. I was so focused on, I'm having such a great time building this business. I'm having such a great time getting involved in these projects that I would choose to do anything other than just go to class.
Yeah.
So whether that was ADHD or not, whether I actually have it or not is up for debate. But if I had been one of those people who went to class every day and did everything they were supposed to do, I would have done exceptionally well, I feel.
It's interesting when you, in this book, it's called ADHD, the Invisible War. Because that's what it is. It is like an invisible war that people don't really see and truly understand. But it's amazing to see where this medication started. Like how do you know that the founder of Ritalin, of methylphenidate, the guy that actually synthesized methylphenidate, that took it for the first time, said he took it once. And he said, never, ever, ever, ever again, because I'll get so addicted to this, it's not even funny. The founder, the father of the guy that actually put the parameters in place of what is somebody that, how do you diagnose ADHD? Because it's such a mythical illness. You can't really diagnose. How do you diagnose something like that? But if you look at the history of this medication, Hitler gave the Germans this stuff in the war.
Holy shit, yeah. I learned about that. I messaged my old history teacher when I learned about this. I said, why are we not taught this? This is the most interesting thing I've ever heard in my life.
He gave them amphetamine, he gave them methamphetamine. Eventually, dexedrine came around. Yes. So dexedrine was also just something. Dexedrine was... So it's all the same thing. But it was marketed as something that will just clear up your flu.
Yeah.
So eventually everybody started, those little Vicks things that you sniff into your nose? It was sold in a little canister like that.
Yeah.
A metal canister. Eventually, people started realizing that everybody's walking around with this little thing.
Yeah, it's addicted.
It wasn't for the flu, it was just because it was so freaking nice. Everybody enjoyed doing it so much. Eventually, they would open up this canister and start chewing the insides to get the stuff.
They said, I watched it on a documentary, a World War II documentary, nothing to do with drugs. I watched this documentary about World War II, and they said that the use of Adderall was a turning point in the war because the Germans were struggling quite a bit in the beginning, and then they started giving every single soldier an unlimited supply of Adderall, which is meth, basically. They gave them as much as they wanted, and the Allied troops were coming back from battles and reporting that it made no sense to them how a single soldier can keep fighting for 16 hours straight and never stop. Yeah. And the fact that the Nazis just steamrolled Europe for several years, people to this day, historians say that Adderall was one of the biggest factors because they could just keep going. I mean, they could cover ground.
It suppresses your eating.
Exactly. That's why they needed those, what are they called? Panzer something. Those really fast tanks that the Nazis had. No one else had tanks that fast. Those tanks could go faster than a running person. So they needed these tanks because these German guys were covering ground like never before. They were literally just running for hours. They were covering
ground in their own flipping pips as well.
They were covering ground for 3 or 4 times faster than a traditional army could cover ground. So they had to invent these fast tanks to keep up with the soldiers. Like, how ridiculous is that? That you have this drugged up Nazi army who just steamrolls the entirety of Europe because they have just practically unlimited energy on meth,
So if you go look at the stats of how these things are being manufactured and the how the rate of which this is being prescribed. It's just ridiculous. So maybe my book is going to make a difference, maybe not, but it was a very good seller. You can get it in any bookstore, and yeah, so it's interesting. I believe that now that we talk about, so I've written a book on addiction and mental illness and stuff, and I believe, so often people talk to me about purpose and calling. What is my calling in life? What is my purpose in life? What I do, and I want to just finish off by saying, that your So let me just go. My desire is to really see somebody step into his purpose and his calling. I love that. That makes my heart beat, Not acting and all of that stuff. Yeah, I enjoy it. It's my job and everything and stuff. But what I really love is if I can see somebody really move into, this thing that he's called for to do in his life. And I help people do that. It's incredible. It's very fulfilling to me. So, and often people say, but what do I know my purpose is? What do I know what my calling is? And somebody once told me, and this is really, I've thought about this a lot, and it makes so much sense, that your calling is something that you will find in your pain, in your deepest pain. If I think about my past, all the rehabs I've been to, all the people that I've hurt, addiction and all of that stuff, and, my mental illness and the struggles, that struggle became the ministry. The test became the testimony. My story came out of that stuff. That's what has led me to live my life. That's my calling. I think your passion is something that you find in your dreams. I've got a lot of passions and I've got massive dreams and everything and stuff. But your calling, I think, is something that partly you'll find in your pain. So yeah, but now I'm done writing books on my own issues. Okay. I've got another book. The next book that's coming out is on leadership, and because everything rises and falls on leadership. So yeah, it's kind of where we are at, and we're trying for a family, Geraldine and myself. So if you want to pray for me, okay, just shoot it out there to whatever's listening. Is pray for a family.
All right. Well, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
And thank you very much to everyone for listening, to tuning in, and I've had an amazing time.
It's awesome. Thank you very much.
All right.
Incredible evening. Incredible. You can, if you want to follow me, go to Facebook, my public page, Hykie Berg public page. You can go to Instagram, but I'm mostly active on my public page, Hykie Berg, B-E-R-G. And if you're interested, if you want to connect with me, you can direct message me. It's very simple to get hold of me. So yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Cheers. Thanks, man. Finished.
JC, you're a star, man. Yeah, let me just go to the bathroom quickly.